All right, so let's jump into the week ahead. We'll be looking at what MicroStrategies is up to, take a look at some of the scenarios that might be playing out here in the market. And also at the end of the show, we'll break into some Bitcoin action along with some other altcoins. You guys don't want to miss this one. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. All right, before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor today, and that is iTrust Capital. If you're looking at long-term holding and you want to get into a crypto IRA, this is one solution you can go with. Of course, all you have to do is visit their website. They've got a ton of offerings, both in the altcoins side. You can also do gold and silver over there as well. So just check out itrustcapital.com. And if you want, use our link down below. It's going to give you a $100 funding reward if you decide to do something over there on that. All right, let's get into a couple of topics today. I want to jump over to just this tweet, kind of outlining the week, key events this week. Consumer confidence data comes in on Tuesday. We'll get building permits and new home sales data also on Tuesday. That'll be an interesting data point to look at. GDP data also coming in from Q2 on Thursday. Pending home sales data on Thursday. Fed Chair Powell speaks also on Thursday. And then the August PC inflation data comes in on Friday. And then wrapping up the week, we'll get a total of 6 Fed speakers this week. So it's going to be a big week. The question will be whether or not we see continued downturn in the S&P. Of course, we'll take a look at a handful of crypto markets that seem to be holding up fairly nicely in terms of resiliency. That's the one thing I think right now that we've continued to see with a lot of these projects is just their consistency in this bear market. Others to watch for this week is Meta. Meta, of course, will be releasing their new event called Meta Connect. It's almost here, so you'll be able to get that. They're doing this via a virtual event, so check it out. I was noticing right here on, I won't play the audio there, but first look at what's next for Metaverse. So they're still using that term. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean they're going to offer some sort of NFTs? Could be a big week within Meta itself. And I think they're also going to go with a strategy here that gets into maybe some more hardware development. Obviously, we'll see something, in terms of the stores, maybe new games, et cetera, playing out. All of this is most likely going to continue to put a little bit of pressure on Apple. And Apple just releasing, of course, their iPhone 15, even though there was a little bit of information here that iPhone 15s were going to see a lower demand than the iPhone 14, even though they have broken out a little bit ahead of schedule in terms of how sales are going. But I will say this, I have not seen any iPhone prior to this one advertise as much as what we're seeing happen around the iPhone 15. So what does that tell us? Is there are we looking at market attrition for Apple, and are we looking at some new, pressures from other companies, including companies like Meta going into this? On to Coinbase news, I want to get into a couple of things that have happened around Coinbase. They successfully registered with Spain's central bank, and there's a couple of things within this that are interesting. In the article, the fact that they registered with the Central Bank of Spain, and basically what they're going to do here is provide exchange and custody services in the country. So all that has been done. Now remember that the biggest issue right now, it doesn't have a licensing regime for crypto firms yet, but Spain will be required to implement under the EU's recently finalized MiCA regulation. So all of that is happening right there in 2024. So another option here for, of course, Coinbase, I think, doing some interesting things. We like it. I mean, in the sense that finally we've got a United States exchange that's really doing some good things around the world, but innovation is still a concern, at least to me, around companies that are looking at, expanding their business, portfolios and what they're planning to do with international customers worldwide. Is that a good thing? I think for Coinbase being a publicly traded company here in the U.S., I think overall it is a good thing for sure. Another thing to report on is Arkham has come in and said, hey, listen, Coinbase now holds 5% of all Bitcoin in existence. And you can kind of see it right here, 25 billion worth of Bitcoin in its reserves, which is amount to 1 million Bitcoin currently. If you look further into this, Coinbase also holds 1.65 million ETH, worth around 2.6 billion and 233 million in USDC. So big deal. Now remember, Arkham named Grayscale, the trust, as the second largest global entity by ETH holdings with 5 billion. So this is pretty interesting that Coinbase is starting to line up in terms of just their ability to acquire and I think get ready for what is coming. And that is the fact that we're going to see a bull run maybe here within the next few months. Remember, crypto typically responds a little bit earlier than the traditional markets. And if you look at traditional markets, we've already seen a lot of that around the macro side, both pressures from inflation, what we're seeing with high interest rates, but also the bond market also starting to show some things. And now the S&P starting to correct. Many people think, a lot of analysts, we're going to have some on the show this month, is that we could see a little bit of a troubled time for the S&P and the Dixie. So there's some things that could be brewing here that play into the crypto market, maybe getting that early move. All right, so our next topic here, need an edge in the 2024 presidential election. This is, I think, all lined up with what is going to be happening in 2024. Obviously, the election itself, Bitcoin halving, and also the aspect of how we might see a Fed pivot. All of that happening in 2024. A couple of things that Vivek Ramaswamy talked about here is readying a crypto policy framework. Let me kind of zoom in on that. Remember, Governor Ron DeSantis also boasted about banning a hypothetical central bank digital currency. That, though, went through the House committee last week, so that was a good thing, even though it was a tighter vote than I think a lot of people stated. Some other things that Vivek talked about is, I think it was on his tweet. Let me go to that. Yeah, right here. So this was his tweet that he actually put out quite a while ago, but it supports his thesis on what he's looking at for crypto in general. So shadow government DC is out of control. Federal courts are our only remaining line of defense. It's kind of what we've seen here within the crypto space itself. Decision is strong and clear to path to Bitcoin and blockchain innovation in the U.S. instead of overseas. But this should have never reached courts in the first place. Day one, I'll rescind all federal regulations that fail the Supreme Court's test in the West Virginia versus EPA. So which quite literally includes most federal regulations, and we'll get it done. So he's really talking about accelerating limited government. That's really kind of his whole shtick. And if you're a believer, whether you're going to get active in the election next year or you're just trying to get your current, congressman and lawmakers to really kind of understand where you go back to some of our videos on our Stand with Crypto video. It goes through a whole lineup of how you guys can get involved. I would recommend, if you're involved in crypto in any way, take a look at that. Further in this is right here. Bitcoin is facing a little bit of pressure, but this is an interesting play out right here, because this is not, I think, not really a big deal whether we see Bitcoin and ETH get affected by this. This, of course, is options expiring at the end of the week. And what they're talking about is that right there, 1.27 million Bitcoin and ETH options contracts worth about 4.8 billion will expire on and end of this Friday. So just be aware of that if you guys are doing those kinds of trades. It's something to consider. Even though if you compare this to the last in options expiries, it doesn't really compare in terms of the size, even though the market is considerably smaller right now in terms of overall market cap. But I'd love to get your feedback. What do you think is going to be one of the catalysts that help us start to truly break out of this bear market and start looking at a bull market? Or do you think maybe Bitcoin has already showed signs that we are skirting along that bottom? If you start looking at the daily and kind of spread that out over time, it does have a lot of those kinds of scenarios. And we've had several traders on that have said that October could be a time, or a time frame to be watching really closely. And if you look at the historical analysis of what's happened in the crypto markets, October has been notoriously pretty positive. Now, does that mean this is why we're starting to see this move right here with, of course, Mr. Michael Saylor coming in and grabbing up 147 million worth of Bitcoin, who now holds 158,000 Bitcoin in their coffers. So pretty considerate of MicroStrategy. They seem to come in and buy at interesting times. If you look at all their history of purchases, not always perfect, but the interesting thing to me is this the whole idea of spot trading and dollar cost averaging and what their strategy has been for a very long time. Do they foresee something that is getting ready to happen in the markets? Meaning, could we start seeing whether we start to see pressures on the traditional finance markets, or if we start seeing some potential maybe lightening of pressure toward the end of this year, quarter four, going into 2024, that opens up some opportunities for the crypto markets as a whole. To this one, latest Bitwise Bitcoin ETF filing takes the SEC task over academic literature. So this is just Bitwise coming in and basically giving the SEC another education process on how spots and futures work. And this, to me, only shows the ineptitude of what the SEC has really faced around all of these scenarios, and why we haven't seen an ETF spot passed or at least approved by the SEC is still a bit surprising, considering that we still have BlackRock right there on the front of this. And I think this is the scenario that you have to consider. Overall, a couple of things here. The asset manager talked about how this works, the detailed review of academic record about the Bitcoin futures market and relationship to spot pricing. And this was in an amendment to its current application for a spot Bitcoin ETF. So this was, of course, filed just here Sunday. So again, this gets into a lot more activity coming in on the spot ETFs. Is something brewing out there? Is there something about to happen in a spot Bitcoin ETF? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see how all this plays out. All right, so next up with the SEC. SEC raises concern on Coinbase's role in the Celsius network bankruptcy restructuring. And to me, this is ludicrous, because where would they go? Meaning, where would potential, especially with Celsius, go to be able to engage in trying to transact back to customers who had lost money in this? That, I think, is the thing that Paul Graywall was talking about in his tweet, in his answer to this tweet, was that, hey, we're proud to engage with Celsius to distribute crypto back to its customers. I wonder why the SEC would object to this. And I think this, again, gets back to the point where, whether you believe in choke point or choke point 2, all the scenarios that have played into this, there's a lot of real action happening right now that continue to put a lot of pressure on these onboarding, and especially when you look at the models in which Coinbase is being looked at, obviously their lawsuit with their Wells notice, but also with the fact that we're seeing these kind of antics coming in from the SEC, where they're trying to simply say, hey, we don't want Coinbase involved in anything. So I think even if you're trying to recover funds here, so this, I think, continues to show the SEC's concern here. Now remember that Gary Gensler is going to be going in front of the House here this week, and on Wednesday is the 27th, Committee of Financial Services are going to be holding the hearing. This is the oversight of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and this, of course, will be Gensler. A couple of things they're going to be talking about here: activities that the SEC has undertaken in the period since October 5th, 2021. So interesting timing here, because October 2021 was when we had the metaverse pump. It's really, that not the all-time high for Bitcoin, but right near the all-time high for Bitcoin. So interesting timing here. Is there something tied into that overall? Further in the PDF, it just shows what else they'll be talking about here: definitions of an exchange. They're also going to be looking at digital assets like Bitcoin with qualified custodians. So that possibly could play into the ETF scenario. So there's a lot here, I think, that's going to be happening this week with the SEC going on the carpet in front of the Financial Services Committee. So I don't know. This is going to be an interesting. We'll make sure and give you guys a full rundown of that video and all the clips that come out of that for you for sure this week. And if you guys have some topics that you would like us to cover, maybe you've got a project, or you're more interested in certain scenarios that might be playing out within the markets, like more macro, let us know if you'd like more analysis like that, or if you like the kind of videos that we've been doing. Just give us some ideas. We're always open to your input for sure. Let's go over to the charts real quick and take a look at where Bitcoin is right now. Coming off the bottom here where it had bounced from around 26,000, edging right up. This is on the 4 hour, so we're holding it around 26.3 on the day. And this is slightly up if you look at the 4 hour and maintain that. Slightly up in terms of trend line. The question will be, can Bitcoin hold this position for much longer? And I think the scenario would be playing against the traditional finance markets if we do see more of this melt up concept that could happen in the bond market, along with other scenarios that may happen within the S&P 500. And the Dixie could play into this as well. So A lot really kind of looming in the next 90 days. Ethereum coming in, also responding. Many of you guys, and of course, Ethereum has been pretty much on a trend downward. If you look at this is showing more of a downtrend on Ethereum. Is this a good place for Ethereum as an entry point? Love to get your feedback on whether or not you're going and looking at Ethereum as an opportunity. Now, the one everybody's been asking me about, of course, is Chainlink. And that, of course, has been because of the Citibank news. We saw that. But remember, Chainlink also was involved in the big bank in Australia, who also has gone the direction that Citibank has gone. And this is what we talked about in the Citibank video, is that the likelihood of a lot more banks going into this type of framework in terms of tokenization of assets and the utilization of the framework and architecture of what Chainlink really means is likely. And that, I think, is causing what we're seeing right now with Chainlink. And of course, it's been up, but if you do look at the daily on Chainlink, let me kind of show you a little bit here to be paying attention to. There's this kind of up and down pattern that you can easily pick in finding these highs and lows. And right now, you know, just like with Chainlink, this might be one of those that could get back at maybe 839. There's its last high that we saw back here on July 19th. If you go all the way back here to April 19th, you saw that one at 850, and then this period right here was all the way back into November of 22, which was holding it around 917. So even though it's downtrending, this is one that has been a good trade. At least for us, we've done some back and forth on spot trades with this one for sure. Solana, of course, now holding in at around 1950. A little bit sideways after it had kind of eclipsed up here around almost 30 bucks back in July. Had a couple of level off points, and then it's been trending down and continues to slow a little bit in terms of sentiment. So remember, though, that Solana has breakpoint coming up in, I think it's this month or next month, yeah. And that, of course, was a huge event last year, even though right after it was the FTX debacle that really, I think, put a lot of side, you know, kind of a side situation on Solana as a whole. Avalanche is the other one that we're watching significantly. This one, though, has been trending down dramatically. And is this an opportunity? Because remember, Avalanche has a lot of implementations within the gaming ecosystem. I think this one is one to keep a very close eye on as it continues to go down. Is there an entry point that we're going to be looking for? You know, we've got a couple of them, and some of them are in that $7 to $8 range, so it might be hovering right here in that spot where we've been looking. So love to get your feedback on these. We always like to get an idea of where you guys are going with your own investments and your own strategies around blockchain in general. If you're not in our Diamond Circle, make sure and get involved right now. It's the best place to get additional content from us. We do a podcast over there. We also do additional analysis. If you're in some of our groups, we do technical analysis and then even inside research that goes a little bit deeper into some of these projects that we talk about and talk to all the time. And of course, if you guys are not following me, it's out there on X. You can find me at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.